Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. We got some great guests for the program today, and the first of which, our own Jerry Bilden had a chance to talk to Christian artist and author Lily Isaacs. Now, she's a recording artist and authored a great book called You Don't Cry Out Loud. So let's join Jerry and Lily as they talk together.
Well, it's my pleasure to talk today with Lily Isaacs, the matriarch, the founding member of the Isaacs, who perform often at the Grand Ole Opry, in the Gaither Homecoming concerts and video series. Individually as a group, they've won a lot of awards, including Dove Inspirational Christian Country, International Bluegrass Music Association Awards, among many others, and honors. And we're honored to have you here, Lily. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jerry. I appreciate it.
Now, you have written quite a book here, and I would like to, we could talk just about music and your family's career and what's going on, but you have written this book that is just an amazing read called You Don't Cry Out Loud. Let me ask you first, I have two questions in one. What made you decide to publish an autobiography? And what's the core message of your book here?
Well, because we've traveled for so many years, we've met thousands of people that have said, well, you need to put your story in a book. And so I just thought maybe that it would be my legacy if I could maybe put in print what's been in my heart all these years and all that I've been through. I've been through a lot in my life, in different aspects of my life, different phases of my life. And my reason for writing the book was to perhaps share with people that, there is light at the end of the tunnel if you have faith in God and you just plow through. My family taught me survival mode many times. And I feel like I'm where I am today because I just didn't give up and kept pushing through all that. So just felt like it would be an encouragement to people that have gone through different things in their lifetime.
It's interesting that you mention survival mode, that you grew up in your family learning survival mode, and of course part of that is growing up in a Jewish family and especially the history of your family. What was that like growing up in a Jewish family?
When you're growing up and you're involved in something, you don't really realize you're different than anybody else. But my parents, being immigrants, tried very hard to provide for myself and my brother and give us a normal life. We lived in we started out in pretty poor neighborhoods and worked our way up to better apartments and better neighborhoods as my father started working more steadily. So, of course, I always wanted to fit in. And we had some different drama in our life that made me always feel like I couldn't fit in, which is part of my book as well. But, I had a pretty normal life, a good life, middle, just I'd say somewhere in the middle of devastating and really good.
That's an interesting phrase. Now, your parents being Holocaust survivors, how did that affect your life as you grew up and your journey to Christ?
My parents were Holocaust survivors and lost everything during the war. They lost their parents, their brothers and sisters, and many family members. So it really took a toll. When we came to America, I was born in Germany after the war. We started with nothing. And growing up in New York City, my father learned a trade and my parents learned how to speak a new language and worked very hard. We became American citizens when I was 9 years old. I'll never forget it. Went to Ellis Island and took the oath with my parents. I was 9 years old and I stood so tall and felt so big and important. Growing up, it was an interesting life. I loved theater arts all of my lifetime, so I always joined all the school plays and I could sing and dance and thought that I would make my family proud because they wanted me to do something successful with my life, and it seemed like the theater was just the place to be. But then God had a different plan for me, and in 1971, because of a death in my husband's family at the time, I wound up in church, and at that point realized and accepted Jesus as Messiah into my heart. And they weren't very happy with me at the time. They were very upset with me. So they were quick to reject me, and it was a very difficult part of my life. I felt abandoned. I felt like what I wanted to do didn't really turn out the way I had planned. And instead of being proud of me, they were ashamed of me. So that was a pretty difficult part of my life. But all in all, looking back, you know, I wouldn't change it because everything happens for a reason. And through that trial, I feel like it just made me a stronger Christian. Mm-hmm. And when my family rejected me, Jesus became everything to me, and he's still my best friend.
How did you come to know him?
Because of a death in my husband's family, he lost a brother during a car accident when he was 27 years old, and it was very tragic. So we went to the funeral, and it was the first funeral I'd ever been to in my life. After the funeral, the family decided to go to church where my brother-in-law used to attend. And I didn't really want to go, but I wanted to go for my husband's sake and for the family's sake. So we sat in the very last pew, and I was really ashamed to be there. But something really got a hold of me that night. And I guess all the questions that I had about God and community and love, that night I just put it all aside and felt conviction in my heart and got down on my knees for the first time in my life, not even knowing how to pray. But that's kind of the way it started. And I think at that moment, God saw my willingness to receive what he had for me, and that taught me to receive more of the Lord. And that's where I learned about Messiah Jesus and all the miracles he'd done, and how Jesus was a Jew just like I was. Mm-hmm. Things that I never knew in my lifetime. And it just all fit together like a puzzle at that point in my life.
Now, you already touched on it briefly, but talk a little bit more into your parents' reaction to this.
When I got saved, I really wanted to sit down with them and explain to them what joy it had brought into my life. And I felt like a void had been filled. So I had planned to go to New York and sit down and just tell them how happy I was. And I knew they would accept that. I thought I did. But I had a cousin visit me at the time, and I was so excited about my new found faith that I took him to church with me, and he went home and spilled the beans. And one day when I was working, my mother called, and I wasn't expecting it. And she said that if I didn't give up that crazy religion, this Jesus stuff, that I could forget I ever had a mother or father, and said for me to never come home again. My father said he'd rather see me dead and buried in the grave than to be a reproach to my family. So I was shocked. I was just shocked. But I had a decision to make in just a few seconds of time. And I feel like that's where I knew I had to stand with the Lord. Regardless of the consequences, I'd found too much joy in knowing Jesus as Messiah. And I told them I didn't want to hurt them, and I wouldn't for anything, but I couldn't lose what I found. So it was a long time. It was months, a year or two before they really received me back home.
So they did come to terms with it?
They did come to terms with it. We didn't talk about religion. When we would, it would start a war, mm-hmm. and I always walked away feeling defeated. So I just felt like I needed to live a good life in front of them and let the Lord shine through me. And they did receive me back home. Even though we might not have agreed on everything, mm-hmm. we agreed to disagree, basically.
Yeah, all right. Well, you went through another process in that too, and that was going from Jewish theater into Christian music. Yeah. Explain a little bit about how that worked and what that was about.
When I was in the late 60s, I thought I was a hippie, and I took some college classes in acting, and I was at Woodstock, and I could always sing, and I played the guitar. So I met a young lady who was also like myself from Manhattan. We took a acting class together, and we started singing in some parties in different areas of the city, and landed a recording contract on Columbia Records in 1967. So that was a miracle, and it was quite exciting for two 19-year-olds that were so green, I didn't know what we were doing. We recorded that album, and it was really amazing to be able to do that. So we started performing in a little nightclub in Greenwich Village, New York, called Gertie's Folk City. During that 2-month engagement, I met my husband there, who was a bluegrass singer. And I had never heard bluegrass music before in my life, never heard the banjo. The only time I heard the banjo was on the Beverly Hillbillies. So it was a beautiful form of music. also very authentic and raw, and just so much similar to folk music at the time that it was interesting to me. So I loved it. I immediately fell in love with it. He and I dated for a couple of years, and then we got married. And after we got saved in 1971, we just started singing together in churches. It was just natural for us to do it, just the two of us. And we'd sing at a church here and there and start doing some homecoming dates where they would have a big day of eating and singing. And so it just kind of snowballed. One place said, will you come to our church? And another place would say, would you come to our church? And then in 1972, we recorded our first gospel album. It went quite well. So it just started building from that point on, where we started singing in a more variety of venues and places. And it was a lot of fun because we were both singers and musicians. And so we just decided to do it for the Lord, and it really worked out great. Then as our kids were born, they were just born singing and started playing instruments at a very young age as well. So that's how we became the Isaacs.
And you have been doing this and so well for so long now, and especially having gone down the road now for the number of years that you've been doing. Talk to me a little bit about your family's vision for this ministry, and has that changed at all through the period of time that you've been doing it?
You know, I think as people get older, your visions change, and I never thought 35, 40 years ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, especially with my children. In 1998, my husband and I divorced. We were married for 28 years, and that was pretty painful to go through that, but we've remained friends, and the kids and I continued on in music. We've definitely changed our style some in the last 15 years. My kids are very talented, and they're songwriters as well. So instead of a more traditional bluegrass feel, they've added a more Americana, folky type style. So we've gotten to play in a lot of different genres of music, not just in churches or festivals, but we're at a lot of fairs. We do a lot of Gaither homecoming dates. We visited the Grand Ole Opry numerous times in the last 10, 15 years. My vision for our ministry is, of course, I'd love to branch out into all fields of music. I think that my children have that much talent, and I'm not just talking from a Jewish mother's point of view, but they're just extremely talented. They ventured into all types of music. My daughters have sung backup for the names of Dolly Parton, Paul Simon, Vince Gill, Trace Atkins.
Wow.
My son is a record producer, and he's produced last week projects for the Oak Ridge Boys. He's in the studio with Jimmy Fortune right now. He's produced for Merle Haggard. He's produced for the Gaither Vocal Band. So my kids have just ventured out into different parts of our musical industry. But together as a unit, I feel like we have a lot to offer. We, of course, I'd love to minister more to the Jewish people, if that would be possible. So we try to do some messianic events. We were honored to be a part of John Hagee's Honoring Israel this past fall. That was really, really neat. You know, my vision for our family is to just reach as many people worldwide as we can. Again, through the Gaither homecoming videos, we've been able to go across the world, and people know who we are. And we always thank the Gaithers for the platform that they've given us through that.
All right. Well, you mentioned your divorce. You've had a couple difficult times in your life, namely with your divorce and as a cancer survivor. How did you make it through these things?
Well, you just plow through it. I mean, I think my parents, certainly I inherited that survival mode that you get into when you feel devastated by different things in your lifetime. I'm a cancer survivor of 30 years. It was very scary at the time. I felt like God was a million miles away, but I wanted to live and make the best out of it because I had small children at the time. And you learn that, you know, just because you're a Christian, you're not exempt from problems or disease or sickness or anything. But with faith in God, you know that ultimately He has a plan for your life. And regardless of what that is or where that is, I think the key is to be willing to just follow the leading of God wherever that might be, in whatever scenario that you're in.
Well, in fact, for my last question, I'd like you to speak to those who perhaps are facing similar difficulties and struggles in their life. How would you encourage them?
Well, I would only say that there's no problem that you can have that's too big for God. And I feel like if you trust in the Lord with all of your heart and pray for His perfect will in your life, that He can fix it. There's a lot of things that we can do for ourselves. And then there's things in life that we can't do anything about. But again, I feel like being willing to walk where God has you to walk and keeping an attitude of thy will be done is the key to it. I know I would have never gotten through so many of the things that I've gone through had I not had the Lord with me to carry me.
Well, the name of the book is You Don't Cry Out Loud, and I went on and I read reviews by folks who have been reading your book, and everybody loves this book for good reason. It's a tremendous read. I would encourage everybody to get it. You Don't Cry Out Loud, the Lily Isaac story. It's been our pleasure to speak with the matriarch. Lily, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate what you do for all of us. Thank you. God bless you.
Fascinating interview. Wow. Hey, coming up next, neuromarketing. You know what it is? How it works? Well, it's being done to you, and you probably don't even know it. We're going to talk to Eric Schiffer coming up in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Well, welcome back. Delighted to have on the program with us today Eric Schiffer. He is Chairman and CEO of Patriarch Equity and digitalmarketing.com. He is a best-selling author. You perhaps have seen some of his articles, and as he also has founded 2 companies listed in Fortune 500, and he's quite the guy around the world, actually, and wants to get us a little bit of an update of what's going on with an experiment that Facebook did, and so many of us are involved in Facebook. Hi, Eric. How you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you? What's interesting for those of us that are regularly on Facebook, and there's hundreds of millions of people around the world, many of them God-fearing people who trust in this platform to be ethical and to be transparent. And what occurred was there was about 600,000 people, largely in the United States, in which Facebook did an experiment, almost like we were lab rats, and without disclosing, without saying anything about this. And what they did was they began to show different feeds of people's friends, feeds that were largely negative, and then also feeds that were positive. And they wanted to show that they could literally manipulate our emotions through what they showed. And sure enough, what they found was that as the more negative feeds that they showed, it began to cause people to write negative things at a higher level. And conversely, on the positive side, people were up in arms over it. There was no disclosure. They're alleging that prior, when people sign up, they sign up and that there's some type of blanket waiver, but it really wasn't right. And this isn't the first time that they've apparently tried to do this either. So for those of you at home and that use Facebook, you really got to be careful. You need to pay attention to what you're experiencing online. Facebook is not the internet. It's a private company. It's for profit. It's obviously it has its own agenda. And so what we recommend is that see how you feel before you get on, see how you feel afterwards. and just be mindful of the fact that they are in control of what you see at the end of the day.
That is fascinating. Is there any legal ramifications from this?
Well, the FTC is looking into it, and that's the body of the government that controls messages that get sent, specifically related to advertising. And there is somewhat of an investigation there. The president of Facebook went on some TV shows or issued a press release or statement basically apologizing for the choice of the test, but never really apologizing for what they did. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if lawyers take up an issue. But unfortunately, you know, people do waive their rights when they sign up to these open platforms. But we trust that the organizations are going to do the right thing and be ethical and be fair with our personal time. But in this case, it wasn't such.
What I hear you also saying, Eric, is this is going to continue.
I think we're in the beginning stages. Look, everything we do today is digital. Facebook is in a competition to survive. They're trying to, you know, make the experience one in which you're not going to leave. And so they are, and they're doing a lot of tests. A lot of these things you'll never know occur. And so there needs to be some protection for citizens and also awareness. And that's why I think bringing this to people's attention is a good thing.
You traffic with a lot of major CEOs. Do they look for this information? I mean, are they part of the fishing pool for this information?
Well, look, I do. And, you know, many are clients. I can say that, you know, people are aware that these things happen. And one of the best things you can do to protect your family is to ask your kids and ask yourself, how are you feeling from what you're experiencing online, especially when you go to Facebook. Also, occasionally clear your cookies and your cache on your computer browser. It's another thing that you can do. You can also do the same thing on your phone. That'll further protect you because not only can Facebook send you messages through their platform, but they also have what's called an ad network. So they can literally follow you around wherever you go within the web. And so it's good occasionally to clear your cache because they begin to build a profile about you, and they'll send you messages and send you advertisements and send you other type of in-view content that, again, is not always in your best interest. Mm-hmm. So it's good many times to be anonymous when you're online.
Wow. You know, I think we all suspected stuff like this was going on. So what is the goal of Facebook to acquire this kind of a, you know, neuromarketing or emotional or psychological response? What do they want to do with this information?
It's what the Bible says. It's about the root of all evil. You know, I mean, this is really about cash. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about making sure that they can figure out how to best control everyone's emotions and minds. I mean, you know, so that people don't ever want to leave. I mean, the ideal board meeting at Facebook probably goes something like this, which is, you know, how do we keep people on Facebook 24/7 and they never leave? I mean, Facebook purchased a virtual reality company recently. And I think one of the goals will be that you'll be able to log on to Facebook and literally attend any live event in 3D. In virtual reality, but you're going to do it through the platform of Facebook. This is what's coming. And so their goal is to be relevant. Their goal is to stay connected to everyone and to be in everyone's life. And so they're going to continue to experiment so that they have that edge.
This is fascinating because I think that one of the things that's concerning me, Eric, is the cynicism in our culture. I mean, we're so cynical about everything. You wonder where this may lead. Mm-hmm. You know,
well, I think it's you know, it will lead to hopefully a balanced approach to using technology. Yeah. I mean, technology has wonderful things associated to it, but there also are the negative side to technology, and it's like anything else. It's, you know, we want to teach our kids to be mindful of the positive and the downside. And, you know, I think we can interpret it however we like to lead our lives, but it's a tool, and we should view it as such. And those tools can be manipulated, just like any other kind of tool can be.
Yeah, your chief client's calling you there. Hey, what's digitalmarketing.com?
Digitalmarketing.com is a company that specializes in driving leads, traffic, and business to small, medium-sized, and large companies around the world. We do it for some of the biggest organizations in the world. We do it for a lot of religious organizations. We do it for, you know, even small and medium-sized businesses. It's really about taking someone that has an online business or even an offline business and wants more leads. They want to grow their company. They want to grow bigger. They're not satisfied with where they're at. And we help them with technology and with integrity on how to build their company one step at a time. And, you know, the average client is growing anywhere from 30% to 150% per year using these technologies.
Fascinating. Is that how people get a hold of you?
They can certainly get a hold of me through that company or through my website, ericschiffer.com, or follow me on Twitter at Eric Schiffer, ERICSCHIFFER.
Thanks, my friend. Nice talking to you. Let's stay in touch, okay?
Absolutely, my friend. Take care. Have a great day.
All right, God bless. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. I can't talk very loud because our next guest is still asleep, but it's always a joy to have with us Todd Friel. And he hosts Wretched TV, seen every day here on the Dove Television Network. He's a humorist. He uses sarcasm. He uses crazy headlines. And he interviews anything that would walk or talk. And he has way too much sugar on his nutty granola every morning. Oh, there he is. Hello, Todd.
We've got 2 hours to fill. Sorry, I dozed off waiting for y'all. Catch a little catnap. You know, I'm actually starting to say y'all better. We've lived in the South now for 6 years. And when I first got here, I said, you all. And they looked at me and they knew that I was nothing but a Yankee and they wanted to send me back up north.
Really? Well, why don't you come to Oregon?
Hey, wait a second. Now, is it your state that is now legally smoking marijuana, or is that your neighbor's state?
That's Washington.
Ah, well, you'll be next. Don't worry. The kids will be able to buy pot at the local store. I understand, too, they're actually doing a farmer's market so you can get your medicinal marijuana.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you know what? You can go across the state line and buy they're calling it recreational marijuana. You're not supposed to bring it back into Oregon, but who's going to check?
Yeah, you know, honestly, it is another demonstration, Perry, and I think this might be our theme for the day. The world's thinking is darkened. It has become this Hobby Lobby thing has been a fascinating study, not from the standpoint of the ruling itself. I'll leave that up to the experts on law, but the response of people. Seriously, I listen to these people. I think I would rather get into a 3-point stance and fire myself into a brick wall and just slam my head against a rock, because it is so ridiculous the way that people are responding and thinking.
Well, it was such a narrow opinion, Todd. Why do you think everybody's up in arms over it?
Well, I think the feminists are up in arm over it. By the way, the feminists who are up in arm over this issue, as if the decision indicated that we're going to shut down every Walgreens and CVS pharmacy and bar women. We're going to tase them at the Walgreens so they can't get their medicine. Honestly,
yeah.
You know, In the meantime, you've got women being kidnapped in Nigeria. Not a word from Hillary Clinton, but she said that this ruling was disgusting. We celebrate a little victory, but it's a reminder of how far our country has come and how it has changed, that there has to be a Supreme Court ruling on this and how narrow it was. We might not be celebrating for very long.
There's a lot of little issues I say little big issues I want to get your opinion on. You know, the border now is chaos, and it's an interesting, everybody can come across the border except for our imprisoned Marine.
Now this is a tough issue for the Christian. And I think we need to start out and take a look at what does the Bible say, and then we'll take a look and see what does the Bible say, and then we'll conclude by figuring out what does the Bible say.
Okay.
God has determined that borders are what makes a country. Without borders, you don't have a country. God drew the borders for Israel. Borders are okay. Without them, you have, I don't even know what you have. Without borders, I guess you just have a range where people can wander around, but you don't have a country without borders. So it's okay to have borders. I think from the Old Testament, we are informed that we should have a heart of compassion for aliens who are willing to melt. If they were willing, if foreigners came into Israel and were willing to convert, take up the language, take up the culture, they would be treated as a typical citizen. If they would not, then it was okay to boot them. So I think we at least get a hint of some of the ways that we should approach the issue. And the one that we shouldn't miss as Christians is that we should indeed have a heart for the alien. And especially, Perry, this is, I get it. We you know, the border's wide open. We look at the economy, what it'll do, the voting, all of those issues. But have you seen the images of those kids on trains coming into the country, riding on top of a train in the middle of they have to jump onto a train to get into our country without a mom and dad. These are little children. I know they've got scabies. I know they've got diseases. But wow, my Christian heart should have some compassion as I try to figure out what is the right thing to do biblically.
Well, you know, I think you hit the nerve because, yeah, there's a lot of violations about borders. I get that. On the compassionate side, are we willing to go down and help the least of these, especially children who, quite frankly, I think, Todd, have been victimized by their own country to be sent up here? And if we don't, you know, they probably will end up in sex trafficking if something isn't done, or they're going to be sold, and some of them are dying before they even get here. Now, the Catholic Church apparently in California is stepping up and opening some outreach systems for this. But it is a mess. It's a chaos. We got a president that won't get down there and take a look, but he's willing to go raise some money today. We have a chaotic problem. We have a crisis on our hand.
We do, and you know, Nancy Pelosi said this is you know, and anytime you quote Nancy Pelosi, we all go, oh. But she said this is an opportunity to show compassion to God's children. Okay. Everything about Nancy Pelosi aside, even though I have a great desire to take all of the illegals and ship them to her very rich district in San Francisco and say, now make a decision, Nancy, she's still right on this. These are human beings made in the image and likeness of God. And while I try to take my Bible first, then consider my politics, my political affiliation, what Rush Limbaugh says, I want to do it speaking with a Christian compassion for human beings. Ultimately, we don't really care. We do care, but ultimately, how they got here, who's to blame, our hearts should be breaking about this situation. Now let's talk about all the legal issues with a broken heart, because I fear that we can talk about the issue and be right and sound like unloving jerks. And then I think everybody loses with that tone. On the other hand, it's been said, or at least suggested, that these children are pawns to dilute the system, and therefore the only answer is total amnesty, and that opens the door for the parents. Yeah, you know, I'm not even, by my comments of saying, let's speak with a heart of compassion, I'm not saying to tear down these walls, open up the fences, let everybody come in and give them a rowboat for the Rio Grande. I'm not saying that at all. We haven't explored those issues. When we talk about these people, let's remember they're people. I just hear a lot of conservative Christian talk that sounds so sharp. that sounds so angry. Look, if you're going to have righteous indignation toward bad government and bad laws, that's fine. But let's remember, these are people knit together in their mother's womb by God himself as we talk about legality.
All right, I got to take a break. When we come back, I got a couple quick questions. One is, do you think the way we are evangelizing in America has changed? We don't seem to be effective. We're not changing the culture. Now, we may be winning the loss, and we may be getting people that are hurting into the church. That's all a good thing. But has that resulted in a way we go about it? We'll be right back with, yes, Mr. Granola himself, Ted Friel, in just a moment.
Today.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back with our good buddy Todd Friel. He hosts Wretched TV. You see it weeknights here on the Dove. And actually, we rerun that program whenever we feel our audience is about to doze off. We throw Wretched TV on the air. And we have been known to do that, Todd. Yes. And then we get all these emails. Who is this guy? So anyway, you ought to move to Oregon, because when you say you all, everybody shows up for a salmon barbecue.
Right. Now, actually, I've been getting emails from that last segment asking if I'll be a keynote speaker at the Democratic National Convention. No, I'm not saying open up the board. I'm not saying that. Just saying. Let's be Christian when we talk about this stuff.
Okay. All right. Now, what's happened to evangelism in America from your perspective?
Well, I'm going to actually give you a quiz, Perry. This comes courtesy of Roger Olson, who wrote an article at Patheos, and this is actually an 11-point quiz. He says that evangelicalism, and we'll get to evangelism, but he says evangelical Christianity has changed since he grew up in the church 7 decades ago. Now, I want to share his observations, and Perry, you tell me if you agree with him or not. Fair enough?
Fair enough. Go.
All right, here we go. The first thing that Roger Olson, who's an evangelical, so he's not throwing stones, he's an evangelical, saying what happened. His first change that he noticed is evangelicals used to talk a lot about the return of Jesus Christ. Come, Lord Jesus, come quickly. Looking forward to his imminent return. And he says he never hears that preached about anymore, unless it happens to be some wild-eyed crazy saying Jesus is coming back next Wednesday.
I would agree with that.
Okay, number two. This is related to the first one. Not a lot of talk these days in churches about heaven or hell, unless of course somebody took a trip to heaven and wrote a book about it.
You know, we're not preaching about hell at all. No.
Okay. Okay, you're bumming me out. You're agreeing with Roger. Number three, to be in evangelical Christianity, a lot of focus on missions. There would be Mission Sunday, an offering for the missionaries. We'd be praying. We'd get little cards. But he said these days you don't hear a lot of talk about encouraging people to have beautiful feet and go and bring the gospel of Jesus Christ. Agree or disagree?
I would disagree with that.
All right. Then would you like to call Roger and complain?
No, I just don't think he's totally accurate, because I think there are churches with still strong mission emphasis.
That's great. That's good to hear. These are look, he didn't call George Barna and do a study. These are his.
I'll call George. Yeah. Okay.
There was a huge emphasis. This one might sting a little bit. A huge emphasis in evangelical Christianity on being separate from the world, not physically, but lifestyle-wise. And he's pretty critical that we look as worldly as the world does in our actions and in our words and in our lifestyles than we did 70 years ago. Agree or disagree?
Totally agree.
I liked it better when you disagreed. I'll be honest with you. Number five, according to Roger Olson, that Christians wouldn't do things in the past like luxury vacations, fancy cars, or what he calls McMansions. But these days, it doesn't seem to be an issue. He thinks that evangelical Christianity has changed. Nobody ever talks about downsizing. Nobody's critical about anybody's lifestyle. Agree or disagree?
That's a good one. I don't know. I think there's a little of both. I don't know about that one.
All right, number 6. He says when he was growing up, they actually had debates about whether or not you should get any sort of government loan or any sort of government subsidy, because you wouldn't take government money. That's a handout. 1 Thessalonians, you don't work, you don't eat. And so Christians, evangelicals, according to him, they would just eschew any sort of government programs. He says today we're just as likely as unbelievers to get on the dole, and that's changed. Agreed or disagreed?
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think there's still a debate. Is that a sin or not? But he's just saying these are changes that I've noticed.
Yeah,
this
right.
is number 7,
right.
Roger Olson. And this one, wow, get ready for this one. He said, we evangelicals 70 years ago, we loved America, but we weren't political. He said, today that line is completely distorted and blurred, and evangelicals are perhaps more known for their political activism and lobbying efforts than we are for the gospel of Jesus Christ. Please disagree.
I think that's the perception, but the results says no.
So you would say that evangelicals are more known for being ambassadors of Jesus or card-carrying Republicans?
Well, no, I think they're perhaps known for being card-carrying Republicans, but that does not say that they're good at it, because the results show that they're not.
Number 9, if I'm doing my...
Well, you asked.
These are just his observations, which, by the way, I think it's worth taking a look at, because, there has been some change in evangelical Christianity, and we shouldn't ask, was it better or are we doing better now, but which is the most biblical, and use these to be introspective. Number 9, he said, evangelical Christians used to do things like memorizing their Bibles, did family devotions, much more biblically literate than today. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
I just saw a pastor of a megachurch, in an effort to be hip and relevant, doing a sermon series on Jesus Goes to Hollywood. Guess what movie, to be hip and relevant and current, did he pick as his sermon text last Sunday? Would you like to guess?
No, go ahead.
You maybe would think, well, one of the movies that is out today, the Tom Cruise movie. No, he chose to preach from Dumb and Dumber, 1994.
Wow.
Number 10 from Roger Olson. Evangelicals used to talk about the blood of Jesus a lot, and these days you don't even hear that term. Peter used it, by the way, in 1 Peter, but not a lot of talk about the blood anymore. That seems to be a change. Now, I don't know that that's better or worse, but it does seem to be a change.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And the 11th, I think, for our consideration is evangelicals used to be evangelists. We used to evangelize, and now we consider evangelism to mean inviting people to church as opposed to going out and proclaiming the good news in the highways and the byways. Agree or disagree?
I agree with that.
And I think, if I might suggest, the reason that so many Christians are fearful of doing that is because we've kind of gotten off track with understanding what the gospel actually is. And when we go back to the basics, suddenly we realize I don't need to be a theologian. I just need to understand the gospel, and I can evangelize anybody. But I think we've kind of forgotten the basics in evangelical Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. If you listen to the messages to church, it's more me-focused than it is reverence to God. I mean, I say that respectfully, but we seem to have lost, A, fear of God, and B, a reverence of God. You agree with that? That's my one question to Todd Friel.
I think what you hear so much, and these are not, I'm not saying that these people are heretics, but we've confused the benefits of the gospel with the gospel itself, because the gospel itself is Jesus died for sinners so that we can be forgiven. The results of that, my thinking changes, my hope, my attitude, I have joy unspeakable, I have assurance, I'm not afraid of judgment anymore, my whole life changes, And we've taken all those life changes and said, come to Jesus and get these life changes. And we failed to say, no, 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 you must repent and put your trust in the King. And the result of that will be all of these things. And I think that fundamental confusion has caused us to not go out and ring doorbells anymore because we've kind of forgotten what the gospel is.
All right, let me ask you a question, another one. Do you think we've lost the fear of God, that there really is a hell and there really is a consequence to our lifestyles?
Martin Luther was a very coarse man. And if you read some of his, like the Tishrei and his table talks, where it was recorded what Luther said, you'd go, wow, he was so coarse and he was, you know, he's so smacking hard against the Pope. And wow, the way that he talked. Why? Was Martin Luther a crude man, or was he just a man of his times and that's the way that he talked? My point being, I think we Christians can be more influenced by culture than we realize. And I wonder if postmodernism, which says, hey, all roads lead to God, nobody can demand that they're right, everybody's right, nobody's wrong, and the worst thing you can do is be judgmental, we adopt that and we feel like we have to protect and defend God and make sure that he's not presented as anything having to do with wrath or judgment. And so in an effort to make God look nice, we've lost the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom.
You know, Todd, you do a lot of on-the-street programming, and I really enjoy it and appreciate your boldness in that area. What's your general feel out there? Do you think that the average person, non-believer out there, A, believes that there is a God, and B, that they may want to be acquainted with him?
Yeah, well, my observation would be, not to skirt your question like a press secretary or a former president, but what I noticed out there is the postmodern mindset. That's why I think we saw the response to the Hobby Lobby decision. You know, they just talk like noodles. You know, it's like you're speaking like a sausage. Yeah. The world is so darkened in their thinking. I asked one person, I pointed to a bench and I said, what is that? And this guy said, it's a bench. I said, I think it's a watermelon. Am I wrong? And he said, no, I don't think you're wrong. This was at a seminary in Atlanta, Georgia, and this man was studying for his doctorate of pastoral ministry. He believed a bench could be a watermelon. Why? Because if that's what you believe, that's what it is. And that has infected the world. And the only way to reason with that is to not reason with that, because their reason is darkened, their understanding is confused. We need to be preaching the Bible, the two-edged sword that cuts through. We need something supernatural. I got about 30 seconds. A big question. It's not fair to ask you this in this amount of time. But rumors of wars, earthquakes, all kinds of weather things. Everything seems to be upside down. Right has become wrong, wrong, right. Are these the last days? Well, they are the last days because Jesus ascended into heaven, but those signs should not be markers to tell us the date that Jesus is coming back, but a reminder that he is coming back. So when you hear of rumors of war and you see a tornado go, oh yeah, Jesus is coming back. Come back soon, Jesus. That's what those signs are for. You're a hoot. Thanks, brother, and I really appreciate what you do. Thanks for what you do. We're honored to carry your program on theDove TV. You know, and we love you guys. We're very grateful for you. All right. Well, listen, take a nap. You need it. Back to it. Okay, see you later. Todd Friel, you can see him on theDove TV weeknights here on theDove at 9 o'clock. And then sometimes you catch his show anywhere where you think you're dozing, we put his show on the air. God bless you, pal. See you later. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.